Marcus was no stranger to rejection. From an early age, he had felt the sting of being underestimated. As a black artist in a world that often overlooked the talents of people like him, he had become accustomed to the silence that followed his exhibitions. His works, filled with vibrant colors, intricate symbolism, and hidden stories of struggle, were often seen as too bold, too unconventional, too different. He poured his soul into every piece, only to watch as the art world turned its back on him time and time again. His studio was small, tucked away in a corner of the city where few ever ventured. The walls were covered in his work, abstract pieces that explored themes of identity, alienation, and a deep-seated connection to something far beyond human comprehension. There were portraits of people with eyes that seemed to look beyond the canvas, landscapes of worlds that didn't exist, yet somehow felt more real than the one he inhabited. And there were the coded messages hidden within every stroke, a language he had inherited from a lineage that stretched back thousands of years, a language that had once been known by his ancestors, who had traveled the stars. Despite his passion, his art remained unknown to the masses. Every time he submitted a piece to a gallery, the response was the same: not what we're looking for. Not commercial enough. Try again next time. But Marcus was not one to give up. He couldn't. Something deep within him told him that his art wasn't just for Earth, it was meant for something greater. It was meant to speak to those who could understand its true meaning, something far more profound than anyone could see on the surface. He knew that one day, someone would recognize the brilliance behind the layers of paint, the stories woven into each brushstroke. Until then, he would continue to create, to push forward, because the truth was in his art, and he couldn't stop. One cold afternoon, after another failed attempt to get his work noticed, Marcus received an invitation. It was from the prestigious Lawson Gallery, one of the oldest and most respected galleries in the city. His heart raced as he read the letter, a formal request to meet with the gallery owner, Mr. Samuel Lawson, for a private viewing of his work. It was the opportunity he had been waiting for, but part of him couldn't help but feel skeptical. Would this just be another rejection? Still, he prepared for the meeting as if it were his last chance. He carefully selected his most captivating pieces, those that spoke the loudest about his inner world and his mission. He knew his art was meant to convey something beyond the mundane, but could he explain that to a man who had likely seen hundreds of works in his lifetime? When Marcus arrived at the gallery, the atmosphere was exactly as he had imagined, cold, sterile, and filled with the unspoken tension of elitism. The gallery was vast, with towering white walls and spotlights shining down on the most expensive pieces, all of which looked painfully similar. Everything was polished, perfect, and impersonal. He was ushered in by a young assistant, who seemed to barely notice him as she led him to a private room at the back. There, sitting behind a large oak desk, was Mr. Samuel Lawson, a middle-aged man with a well-groomed beard and a pair of thick glasses that he pushed up the bridge of his nose as Marcus entered. He looked at Marcus with an expression that seemed to say, "What have we here? Marcus Williams, I presume?" Mr. Lawson's voice was smooth, almost condescending. "I've heard a lot about you. I must say, I'm intrigued." Marcus nodded, trying to maintain his composure. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with me, Mr. Lawson. I brought some of my latest works." Mr. Lawson barely glanced at the paintings Marcus had set up on the small table between them. Instead, he studied Marcus as though evaluating him like a piece of furniture. His eyes lingered a little too long on Marcus's clothes, the slight crease of the artist's jeans, the simplicity of his jacket. Mr. Lawson said, clearing his throat. "You know, I wasn't sure what to expect. I've seen a lot of young artists like yourself come through here, full of passion, but lacking depth. Let's see what you've got." He stood up and walked toward the paintings, moving from one to the next with an air of detached interest. Marcus watched as Mr. Lawson paused in front of each piece, his face unreadable. "Well," Mr. Lawson said after a long silence, "I can see you've got a lot of emotion in these. A lot of angst, really. But I don't know if you realize this, Marcus, art like this doesn't really sell. People want what's easy to digest. What's trendy." Marcus felt his heart sink. It was the same response he had received countless times. "I understand," he said, his voice steady, despite the disappointment that gnawed at him. "But I believe my work has a deeper meaning. It's not just about what's on the surface, there's a story behind every stroke." "Oh, I'm sure there is," Mr. Lawson replied, smirking. "But the art world doesn't care about stories that only a handful of people would understand. Your pieces, well, they're a bit too abstract. A little too, out there." Marcus clenched his fists, but held his tongue. He wasn't here to argue, he was here for an opportunity. He had to believe in his art, even if no one else did. Mr. Lawson circled back to the paintings, lingering on one in particular, a canvas that depicted a barren, alien landscape with figures standing in a distant horizon. There were strange, glowing symbols etched into the ground, like an ancient language left behind by a lost civilization. "This one's interesting," Mr. Lawson mused, running his fingers along the frame. "But it's so, well, odd. What exactly are you trying to say here, Marcus?" Marcus swallowed, feeling the weight of the question. He wasn't sure how to explain the depths of his inspiration without sounding like a madman. "It's about the unknown," he said slowly. "About how we, as a society, fail to understand the bigger picture. There are truths hidden beneath the surface of this world, truths that most people don't even realize exist." Mr. Lawson raised an eyebrow. "And you think your paintings uncover these truths?" Marcus nodded. "Yes. There are secrets in this world that go beyond what we know, things that have been hidden for centuries. My art is about unveiling those truths." Mr. Lawson let out a short laugh, almost derisive. "You're a dreamer, Marcus. But dreamers don't sell art. I'm afraid this is the kind of work that stays in small galleries, never making it into the mainstream. You need to think more commercial. More accessible." The sting of the words hit Marcus harder than he expected. His vision was so much more than that. It wasn't about accessibility, it was about discovery. But he couldn't convince Mr. Lawson of that. Not today. "Thank you for your time," Marcus said, his voice quiet but firm. "I appreciate the feedback." As he turned to leave, Mr. Lawson called out behind him, his voice laced with a strange sort of mockery. "Good luck, Marcus. But remember, art isn't about what's buried deep inside you, it's about what the market will pay for." Marcus didn't look back. He knew he had just experienced another rejection, but he wasn't defeated. His journey was far from over. And though Mr. Lawson's words stung, they also served to fuel his resolve. In that moment, as he stepped out into the cold, gray streets of the city, Marcus made a vow to himself: he would not be deterred. His art had a purpose, and he would find the people who could understand it. Because in his paintings, there was more than just color. There was a message. A message about Earth's deadly nature and the secrets it had hidden for eons. And someday, someone would see it. The days after his meeting at the Lawson Gallery were filled with an uneasy stillness. Marcus spent hours in his studio, poring over new works, trying to channel his frustration and the bitterness of the rejection into something even more profound. The sting of Mr. Lawson's words lingered in his mind, but deep down, Marcus knew that he was not creating for the approval of any gallery owner or critic. He was creating for something bigger than himself, for something that had yet to be fully realized. But as the days turned into weeks, he had to admit to himself that his path was growing more difficult. The bills piled up, the rent on his small studio was overdue, and he was starting to feel the weight of a long career that had yet to yield any tangible success. The thought of giving up never fully took root, but the temptation to retreat, to simply let go, was becoming harder to ignore. Then, out of the blue, a letter arrived. It wasn't another rejection, nor was it a form letter from a gallery. This was a personal invitation, the kind of thing Marcus had only dreamed about. The letter was from none other than Mr. Samuel Lawson himself, the very man who had dismissed his art so easily just weeks ago. The letter was formal but cordial. "Dear Mr. Williams, I trust this message finds you well. I would like to extend an invitation for you to visit the Lawson Gallery once again, as I have reconsidered your recent works and would be interested in discussing potential future opportunities. Please come at your earliest convenience. I look forward to further conversation. Marcus stared at the letter for several long moments, his mind racing. What had changed? Why the sudden interest? His first instinct was to remain cautious, to not get his hopes up. Yet, something deep inside him pushed him to take a chance. He carefully folded the letter and placed it in his jacket pocket. That afternoon, he dressed in his best, his old, worn jacket, his nicest pair of jeans, and polished shoes that still held the marks of many days spent walking the city streets. His nerves buzzed with a strange combination of excitement and skepticism as he made his way to the Lawson Gallery once again. The gallery's exterior was as imposing as it had been during his last visit. The large, polished windows displayed exquisite works of art, pieces that were universally praised, that had graced the most famous museums and private collections in the world. Marcus almost felt like an intruder, a small fish swimming through the massive ocean of the art world. As he entered, the same assistant from before greeted him, her smile now a bit more professional, but still distant. She led him down the same sleek corridor to the back offices, but this time, she stopped at a different door, a much grander one. "Mr. Lawson is expecting you," she said, before turning and walking away, leaving Marcus standing alone before the door. With a deep breath, Marcus knocked. The door creaked open, and there, standing in the middle of the room with his back to him, was Mr. Lawson. The man turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "Marcus," he said, his voice neutral, but with a hint of something else. "I'm glad you could make it." Marcus nodded, not sure how to respond. "Thank you for inviting me." Mr. Lawson gestured for him to sit. As Marcus lowered himself into the chair across from him, he couldn't help but notice the subtle difference in the room. The walls were adorned with various works of art, pieces that Marcus knew would fetch fortunes in any auction. Yet, on the far wall, there was a series of empty frames, as though they were waiting for something. "So, I've been thinking a lot about your work," Mr. Lawson began, his tone still calculating. "I must admit, I was a little dismissive before. But after some reflection, and after seeing the increasing buzz about you in certain circles, I've realized that there's more to your art than I initially gave it credit for." Marcus stayed silent, letting the words sink in. This wasn't the man who had turned him away only a few weeks ago. This was someone trying to convince him that he had made a mistake. And Marcus wasn't sure whether he should accept the olive branch or continue to distrust the motives behind this sudden change of heart. Mr. Lawson continued, leaning forward, his hands clasped together. "I've come to understand that your pieces are more than just art. They seem to speak of something deeper, something that resonates with people in a way that's hard to define. And I'd like to explore that with you, Marcus. To help you reach the audience your work deserves." Marcus sat still, not trusting himself to speak just yet. His thoughts swirled. This was the moment he had been waiting for, but it felt off. He had already been rejected once, by this man. What had caused this shift? "I'm not sure I understand what you mean," Marcus replied carefully. Mr. Lawson smiled, a glint of something new in his eyes. "It's simple, really. Your paintings, they're more than just aesthetic. They have a kind of coded message, don't they?" Marcus's heart skipped a beat. How had he known? His art was meant to be a cryptic language, a series of hidden symbols meant to speak to those who could understand its significance, symbols that referenced the forgotten knowledge of his alien ancestors. But how could Mr. Lawson have seen this? How could he possibly know? "Coded?" Marcus asked, trying to mask his surprise. Mr. Lawson's smile widened. "Yes, and I'm not talking about mere brushstrokes. I mean that there's something otherworldly about them. Your work seems to tap into an energy, a force that most of us are too blind to recognize. It's almost as though you're telling a story that goes beyond the earth itself." Marcus blinked, trying to process the words. Could Mr. Lawson be right? Did his art carry messages that reached beyond the human world, messages that even the gallery owner was now beginning to grasp? Tell me, Marcus, Mr. Lawson said, his voice softer now, have you ever wondered if there's more to your art than you've let on? More to your past? More to what you're really trying to say? Marcus's mind reeled. Was he being manipulated? Or was this the moment when his art, his true purpose, was finally being recognized? Before he could respond, Mr. Lawson stood up and walked toward the wall where the empty frames hung. These frames, Marcus, he said, tapping one lightly. They're waiting for something special. Something that could change everything. And I think you might be the one to fill them. Marcus stood up slowly, his pulse quickening. The mystery of the empty frames, the coded messages in his paintings, and the hidden knowledge of his alien heritage were all converging. This was no longer just a conversation about art. This was something bigger, something about Earth's hidden truths and the destiny he had been unknowingly carrying. Let's take this to the next level, Marcus, Mr. Lawson said, looking at him with a new intensity. I want you to help me uncover what's hidden in your work. And together, we can bring it to the world. Marcus took a deep breath. He had no idea where this path would lead, but he felt the weight of it, the weight of something much larger than himself. He had to make a choice. Would he trust Mr. Lawson? Or was he being drawn into a deeper mystery that neither of them fully understood? I'm ready, Marcus said quietly, his voice steady. And just like that, the game had changed. The encounter had shifted the course of his future. The truth was closer than ever, and it was calling him forward. The days that followed Marcus's meeting with Mr. Lawson were filled with an eerie sense of anticipation. It was as though something unseen was drawing them both toward a discovery neither of them fully understood. As they began to delve deeper into Marcus's art, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about the paintings, it was about something far more significant. He had always known that his work was special, that it was meant to tell a story, but now, with Mr. Lawson's renewed interest, it felt as though the layers of meaning within his pieces were finally coming to light. The gallery owner wasn't just interested in the aesthetic quality of Marcus's paintings anymore, he was fixated on the cryptic messages, the symbols, and the otherworldly energy that seemed to pulse beneath the surface of each canvas. Lawson had become increasingly obsessed with deciphering what he believed to be a hidden language, something ancient and foreign. To Marcus, this obsession was not only puzzling but also oddly familiar. For years, Marcus had worked with the feeling that his art spoke of something beyond the Earth's realm, something older, more powerful, and buried deep in the fabric of the world. He had always been drawn to the unknown, to the whispers of an ancient race of beings who had long since disappeared from Earth. His ancestors had been part of this race, travelers who had arrived on Earth millennia ago. Their knowledge of the universe, of energy, and of creation, was encoded in the very strokes of Marcus's brush. But until now, he had never fully understood the implications of what he was carrying within him. One evening, as Marcus sat in his studio, carefully working on a new piece, he received a call from Mr. Lawson. The gallery owner's voice was urgent, almost frantic. Marcus, I need you to come down to the gallery. There's something we need to discuss. It's urgent. Despite the unease that crept up his spine, Marcus agreed. He couldn't deny the pull that had brought him this far. He grabbed his jacket and headed out into the cold night, the streets blurring around him as his mind raced with questions. What had Mr. Lawson discovered? What was so urgent? When he arrived at the gallery, the usual silence had been replaced by a hum of activity. Several people were gathered around the back room, speaking in hushed tones. As soon as Marcus stepped inside, all conversation stopped. The group turned to face him, and Mr. Lawson stepped forward, a look of disbelief in his eyes. Marcus, I think we've uncovered something incredible, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You were right all along. Your work is more than just art. It's a map. A map of the Earth's hidden past, and perhaps even its future. Marcus's heart skipped a beat. The words rang with a truth he had always known but had never been able to fully articulate. His art was a map, a blueprint to something larger than life itself. But what exactly was it pointing toward? We've been studying the symbols in your paintings, Mr. Lawson continued, and it turns out they correspond to ancient sites around the world, places that were once home to a forgotten civilization. These sites are connected by something powerful, something that we have only just begun to understand. Marcus felt a wave of disbelief wash over him. You're saying that my paintings are a map? A map to something hidden? Exactly, Mr. Lawson said, a glimmer of excitement in his voice. The codes in your work match the locations of these sites, and we've been able to trace their positions using modern technology. The symbols aren't just abstract, they're coordinates. Coordinates to ancient ruins that have been buried for centuries. A chill ran down Marcus's spine as the implications of Mr. Lawson's words began to sink in. He had always known there was something more to his work, but he hadn't expected it to be tied to Earth's forgotten history. These ruins, these lost sites, what were they? And what did they mean for the future of the world? We've identified 3 primary locations, Lawson continued. And we believe there may be more. But what's even more extraordinary is that these sites don't just contain ancient relics. They're connected to something far greater. There's a hidden power within them. A power that could change everything. Marcus felt a sudden wave of recognition. This was it, the truth that had always been just beyond his reach. His art had been the key to uncovering the hidden history of the Earth, to revealing the secrets that had been buried for millennia. And now, with the help of Mr. Lawson and his newfound obsession with the codes, they were on the verge of discovering what lay hidden beneath the surface. What kind of power are we talking about? Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We're not sure yet, Mr. Lawson admitted. But the patterns in your art suggest that these sites were once part of an ancient network, something far beyond anything we've seen on Earth. There are symbols that we've identified as alien in nature, and they seem to point to a greater purpose. A purpose that could explain why your ancestors came to Earth in the first place. Marcus felt a cold shiver run through him. The thought of his ancestors, the alien travelers who had come to Earth long ago, was not just an abstract concept anymore. It was real. The knowledge they had left behind, the messages encoded in his art, were part of a larger story, one that stretched across the stars. And now, he was the key to unlocking that story. This is what I've been trying to tell you, Marcus said, his voice steady, despite the gravity of the situation. My art isn't just a reflection of the world around me. It's a record of what came before. A record of the aliens who arrived on this planet and left behind their legacy. Their knowledge is in my blood, in my art. And now, it's time for the world to understand it. Mr. Lawson looked at him, a mixture of awe and disbelief in his eyes. Do you realize what this means, Marcus? The power that's hidden here. It could change everything. This isn't just about art anymore. It's about the future of humanity. About understanding the very forces that have shaped our world and the civilizations that came before us. Marcus nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the revelation. The pieces were falling into place. He had always known that his art was more than just an expression of his inner world. It was a message from the past, a map to something far greater. And now, with Mr. Lawson's help, they were on the verge of unlocking the greatest mystery of all, the truth behind Earth's deadly nature, and the alien civilizations that had once walked its surface. But Marcus also knew that with this revelation came danger. The knowledge they were about to uncover could change the course of human history, and not everyone would want that truth to come to light. There were forces at play, forces that had been manipulating the world for centuries, and they would stop at nothing to keep the truth hidden. As Marcus looked around the room, at the faces of those who had gathered to help him, he knew that they were all now part of something much larger. They had uncovered the first pieces of the puzzle, but the road ahead would not be easy. The truth was dangerous, and the journey to uncover it would require more than just art. It would require courage, determination, and a willingness to confront the unknown. And for Marcus, that journey had only just begun. The weight of their discovery hung heavily in the air, and for the first time, Marcus felt the full magnitude of what he and Mr. Lawson were attempting to uncover. It wasn't just about the art, nor was it merely about ancient ruins and forgotten civilizations. What they were chasing was something much more elusive, something that could rewrite everything they thought they knew about Earth's history, its origins, and the forces that had shaped its fate. The days that followed were a blur of frantic research, late-night meetings, and long hours spent in the gallery's backroom, poring over the symbols in Marcus's paintings. They had assembled a small team, each an expert in their own field: historians, archaeologists, cryptographers, and even astrophysicists, who worked tirelessly to decipher the codes hidden within the artwork. They had only scratched the surface, but the results were already astonishing. The team had mapped out the first of the ancient sites, based on the symbols in Marcus's paintings. These locations, spread out across the globe, had been buried by time, forgotten by history. What they had found was more than just ruins or ancient artifacts. There were technological remains, artifacts that defied the conventional understanding of the time periods in which they were supposedly created. And there was something else, something far more perplexing. As the team pieced together their findings, one question kept resurfacing: what had these ancient civilizations known that humanity had forgotten? Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that there were unseen eyes observing their every move. The more they uncovered, the more the sense of being pursued grew. Someone, or something, did not want them to uncover the truth. It was during one of their late-night sessions in the gallery when Mr. Lawson dropped the bombshell. "We've identified the next location," Lawson said, his voice tense. He glanced around the room, ensuring no one else was listening. "But there's something strange. The site, it's not just buried beneath the earth. It's underneath the ocean." The words hung in the air like a thick fog. The ocean. The vast, mysterious, and largely unexplored expanse of water that covered most of the planet. Marcus felt a jolt of unease at the idea. The ocean was full of secrets, many of which had yet to be discovered. But this felt different. This was no ordinary discovery. "I don't understand," Marcus said, his mind racing. "How could a civilization, an alien race, build something beneath the ocean? How do we even get there?" Mr. Lawson hesitated for a moment, his eyes narrowing. "That's the problem. The location isn't on any modern map. The coordinates match a point in the Pacific Ocean, an area that's been marked as a no-go zone for decades due to its depth and the mysterious electromagnetic activity that's been recorded in the area." Marcus was silent for a moment, trying to process the enormity of what they were facing. This wasn't just a case of finding ancient ruins. This was about uncovering something that had been hidden, deliberately, from the world. The alien race that had come to Earth, the travelers who had left their knowledge behind, had hidden something under the ocean's surface. A message? A relic? A warning? How do we even begin to look for it? Marcus asked, his voice edged with both excitement and fear. "We start by gathering resources," Lawson said. "We'll need funding for an expedition, and we'll need specialized technology to explore that depth. I've already reached out to a few companies that specialize in deep-sea exploration, but it will take time." Marcus nodded, understanding the complexity of the task ahead. But the pull of discovery was undeniable. The answers were out there, waiting to be uncovered. And for the first time in his life, Marcus felt like he was on the verge of a great revelation, one that would change the course of history. As the team made plans for the expedition, Marcus's thoughts turned inward. His art, his ancestors, the coded messages in his paintings, they were all pointing towards something far beyond anything he had ever imagined. But what was it? What had they been sent to Earth to protect, or perhaps to warn humanity about? The dream of uncovering these truths consumed him. But the darker side of the discovery loomed large in his mind. What would happen once they unearthed whatever lay beneath the ocean? What if the power hidden there was something humanity was not ready to face? What if, just as he had discovered through his art, the truth was far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated? There were nights when he couldn't sleep, his mind racing with visions of what might be hidden under the ocean's surface. The team was making progress, but Marcus felt a growing sense of urgency. The forces they were up against were vast, and he could sense that they were being watched by more than just those interested in the knowledge they were uncovering. In his quieter moments, when he was alone in his studio, Marcus would study his paintings, examining the patterns, the colors, the hidden symbols, and wonder how much of the truth was buried within them. He had always believed that his art was a form of communication, a message from the past. But now, it felt as though his work was more than just a reflection of his inner world, it was a key to unlocking a much larger mystery. One evening, as he was lost in thought, a message arrived, a cryptic email with a single line of text. "They're already searching. Be careful." The message was unsigned, but Marcus knew, instinctively, that it wasn't a coincidence. Someone, somewhere, had already become aware of their search. And if they weren't careful, they could be walking into something far darker than they realized. Mr. Lawson called a meeting the next morning, his face pale and drawn. "We've been monitoring the progress of the expedition," he said, "and I don't like what I'm seeing. There's been a shift in the tides, so to speak. Someone else is looking for the same thing we are." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the gravity of his words. If others were hunting for the same artifact, the same power, the race to uncover the truth had just become much more dangerous. "We need to move quickly," Marcus said, his voice steady, despite the rising tension. "We're not the only ones who want this information. Whoever else is out there, they'll stop at nothing to find it first." Lawson nodded grimly. "Exactly. We have to get ahead of them. And if we're going to succeed, we need to be prepared for whatever comes next." As the team prepared for the next phase of their journey, Marcus felt the weight of the unknown press down on him. The path they were walking was shrouded in danger, and every step forward seemed to take them deeper into the mystery. The world, as they knew it, was about to change forever. But the question remained, would the truth they uncovered be the salvation of humanity, or its undoing? The ocean, with all its secrets, held the key to the answers they sought. And now, Marcus and his team were about to embark on the most dangerous journey of their lives. The expedition preparations were a blur of activity. Weeks passed in a whirlwind of meetings, phone calls, and strategic planning. Marcus's focus never wavered, his mind remained fixated on the hidden location beneath the Pacific Ocean, the site that could unlock the deepest secrets of Earth's past. But with each passing day, the sense of urgency grew. The darker forces that had begun to shadow their every move were relentless, and Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. It wasn't just the cryptic message he'd received a few days earlier, there were also signs in his paintings, signs he had ignored at first. Symbols were shifting, and certain patterns he hadn't seen before seemed to glow more vividly under the dim light of his studio. Marcus had always trusted his intuition, and it told him that his work was trying to guide him, to warn him. The truth was closer than ever, but so were the dangers. Mr. Lawson, as usual, was in full control of the logistics. He had secured funding for the expedition, bringing in a team of highly trained divers, scientists, and engineers. They would be using the latest deep-sea exploration technology, including remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, and submersibles designed for the extreme depths of the ocean floor. The location they were headed to was known for its harsh conditions, pressure, darkness, and electromagnetic disturbances that could interfere with their equipment, but Lawson was determined to push forward. On the eve of the expedition's departure, Marcus stood on the balcony of his apartment, staring out at the vast city skyline. His mind was awash with conflicting thoughts. He was both exhilarated and terrified. The ocean had always represented the unknown, a place where mysteries lay buried beneath miles of water. But now, it was no longer just an exploration of the physical world, it was a journey into the unknown forces that shaped his art, his ancestry, and the very future of humanity. "You sure you're ready for this?" Mr. Lawson's voice broke Marcus's reverie. He had appeared behind him without warning, his ever-present smile tempered by a hint of concern. Marcus turned, giving the gallery owner a half-smile. "I don't think anyone can ever be ready for something like this. But we don't have a choice, do we?" "No," Lawson replied, his tone more serious than usual. "We don't. But we've come too far to turn back now. Tomorrow, we dive into the abyss. We find what was hidden, and we unlock the truth." Marcus nodded. Let's hope that truth is worth finding. The following day, the team gathered at the docks, where the expedition's research vessel, the Leviathan, awaited them. The ship was a behemoth, designed for long-term exploration in the harshest of conditions. It was equipped with state-of-the-art navigation tools, sonar systems, and high-tech submersibles that could descend to depths where few had ventured before. The crew was already on board, preparing for the journey. As Marcus boarded the ship, he couldn't help but notice the tension in the air. The crew members were moving with quiet efficiency, but there was an undercurrent of unease. They had been briefed on the dangers of the mission, but they hadn't been told everything. Only a select few knew the true nature of what they were searching for. Marcus met with Lawson in the ship's operations room, where the final preparations were being made. The expedition would be a 2-week journey, heading to the coordinates deep within the Pacific Ocean. The electromagnetic disturbances in the area had been carefully studied, and the team had developed a plan to deal with them. But despite all the planning, Marcus knew that no one could predict what they would find. "We're ready," Lawson said, his eyes scanning the map on the wall. "We've got the coordinates locked in, and the submersibles prepared. We'll be making our first descent in a few hours." "I know," Marcus replied, his voice steady. "Let's get started." The journey out to the designated area was uneventful at first, but the closer they got, the more palpable the tension became. The ocean seemed to grow darker, more oppressive, as if the very waters were alive with secrets. Marcus spent most of the time on deck, gazing out at the endless expanse of water, trying to shake the feeling of being watched. As the sun set on the horizon, the Leviathan arrived at the coordinates. The team gathered around the control room, watching as the submersible, nicknamed Neptune's Eye, was lowered into the depths. The small, remotely operated vehicle descended slowly, its lights cutting through the inky blackness of the ocean. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the live feed from the submersible. The world on screen was alien, a vast, barren landscape of deep-sea trenches, strange rock formations, and creatures that seemed to belong to another world. It was a place that had remained untouched by humanity for eons. But as the submersible ventured further, something strange began to appear on the sonar. "There's a structure ahead," one of the engineers said, his voice trembling with excitement. "It looks artificial." Marcus leaned forward, his pulse quickening. The structure was not natural. It was something that had been placed there, something that had been hidden beneath the ocean's surface for millennia. The team's excitement was palpable, but Marcus's mind was racing. This was it, the first sign of what they had been searching for. The submersible descended deeper, moving toward the structure. As the feed became clearer, Marcus could see the outline of massive, intricately carved stone columns, partially submerged in the ocean floor. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The architecture was not of human origin. The symbols on the walls were unmistakable, alien symbols that matched the ones in his paintings. This was the site his art had been leading him to. But as they approached the structure, something else became clear. There was something else down there, something darker, something more powerful. A faint, pulsing light appeared in the distance, coming from within the ruins. It was subtle at first, but then it grew stronger, like a heartbeat echoing through the ocean's depths. "Do you see that?" Lawson asked, his voice almost a whisper. "What is that light?" Before anyone could respond, the submersible's lights flickered. The sonar blipped erratically, and the submersible seemed to sway in the water, as though caught in an invisible current. The team's excitement turned to confusion, then to fear. Something was interfering with their equipment. And whatever it was coming from within the ruins. Suddenly, the submersible jerked violently, throwing the crew members off balance. The lights flickered out, plunging them into complete darkness. The last thing Marcus saw before the feed cut out was the pulsing light, growing brighter, as if alive. Then, silence. The team stared at the empty screen in stunned disbelief. Whatever they had encountered was no longer visible. The ocean had swallowed it whole. And Marcus realized, with chilling clarity, that they had just uncovered something far greater than they had ever anticipated. The abyss was not just a place of forgotten history. It was a living, breathing force, one that had been waiting, hidden beneath the ocean's depths, for them to find it. And now, they were about to learn just how deadly the truth could be. The silence in the control room was deafening. The team stared at the flickering screens, unsure of what they had just witnessed. The submersible's feed had cut out abruptly, the images of the glowing light and the strange, pulsing energy disappearing into an empty, black screen. The crew members exchanged anxious glances, each person trying to process what they had just encountered. This can't be right, one of the engineers muttered, pressing buttons frantically in an attempt to restore the submersible's feed. We've lost connection. We've completely lost connection. Marcus felt a chill crawl up his spine. The incident was unlike anything he had ever seen, even in the depths of his own artwork. This wasn't just a glitch or an anomaly, it felt deliberate. It was as if the structure itself had pushed back against their intrusion, blocking their access to its secrets. Mr. Lawson paced nervously beside him, his face a mixture of determination and concern. "We need to get the submersible back," Lawson said, his voice hard. "The technology we've brought is state-of-the-art. There's no way it should just fail like this." "We need to recalibrate," said one of the deep-sea experts. "The interference, it's almost like the structure is emitting a pulse. I've never seen anything like it. It's affecting everything we're using." Marcus watched, his mind racing. The pulsing light, the symbols in his paintings, they were connected, he was certain of it. This wasn't just a relic from the past, this was something much older, much more powerful. The structure was alive, in a sense, and it was reacting to their presence. The real question was, why? "Do we have a way to contact the submersible?" Marcus asked, trying to steady his nerves. "Is there any way we can find out what happened?" The crew continued to scramble, but the communication link was still down. The submersible's lights remained out, and the sonar returned nothing but a vague, unsettling static. The feeling of isolation in the deep sea, the abyss, intensified as each passing minute added to the tension. "I don't think it's going to respond," Lawson said grimly. "We've got no contact. But we're not leaving without answers. We're going down there ourselves." The decision to launch a rescue operation was met with a mixture of reluctance and resolve. The deeper they ventured into the ocean's heart, the more the atmosphere shifted. The sense of something alive, watching, waiting, grew stronger. Marcus couldn't explain it, but the instinct to push forward, to find the truth, was overwhelming. The crew prepped another submersible, this one more compact and agile, designed for exploration and retrieval in dangerous environments. Unlike Neptune's Eye, this submersible, the Warden, had a reinforced exterior and a more powerful engine. It would give them the best chance of getting close to the mysterious structure and the light that had appeared. As the new submersible was lowered into the water, Marcus, Lawson, and the rest of the crew gathered around the monitoring station, watching the descent in tense silence. The ocean was silent, almost too silent, as the vehicle descended deeper into the darkness. Minutes passed like hours, and as they reached the ocean floor, the monitors flickered back to life. The feed was filled with the eerie glow of the structure, now more distinct in the darkness of the deep. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest as he gazed at the footage. The ancient ruins loomed large on the screen, and at its center, the same pulsing light illuminated the ocean around it. But now, something was different. The light had grown stronger, more intense. It wasn't just an energy field, it was as though the ruins were feeding off something, drawing power from the depths of the ocean. The source of this strange energy was at the heart of the structure. "This is unlike anything we've ever encountered," said one of the archaeologists, his voice shaky. "This isn't just an artifact. It's something alive." Marcus's mind spun as he connected the dots. Alive. He had thought about the possibility before, but seeing it in real time was something else. The structure seemed to be breathing, reacting to their presence in the water. This wasn't just ancient knowledge, it was something far older, perhaps even alien, and it had been dormant for millennia. The submersible navigated closer to the structure, its lights illuminating the colossal stone pillars that rose like silent sentinels from the ocean floor. The symbols on the pillars matched the ones in Marcus's paintings, their patterns flickering in and out of visibility as the submersible approached. The camera panned across the stone surface, capturing the intricate carvings. Marcus's heart raced as he saw something he hadn't expected, a series of glyphs arranged in a spiral pattern, leading to a central chamber. It wasn't just a structure, it was a key, a map, a message that had been preserved through time, waiting to be discovered. As the warden approached the entrance of the chamber, the pulsing light intensified. The energy grew overwhelming, filling the submersible's sensors with static, creating an eerie sense of distortion in the water. The crew felt the pressure building, not just from the depths of the ocean, but from something far greater. Then, without warning, the lights on the warden began to flicker, and the temperature in the cabin dropped. "Something's wrong," the pilot muttered, trying to regain control. "It's like we're being pulled in." But before anyone could react, the submersible was sucked forward, its descent accelerating at an unnatural rate. The walls of the chamber, which had once seemed distant, now rushed toward them with terrifying speed. "Brace for impact," shouted Lawson, but it was too late. With a violent jerk, the submersible was engulfed by the chamber's entrance. The monitors went dark again as the submersible vanished into the depths. "No!" Marcus yelled, scrambling to his feet. "We have to get them back. We have to go after them." The team members around him were in disarray, their faces pale, their eyes wide with disbelief. The unthinkable had just happened, the submersible had disappeared into the unknown. But Marcus, driven by the compulsion of his visions and his art, could not stand idle. "We're going in," Marcus said, his voice resolute. "We're going to bring them back. And we're going to uncover whatever is hidden down there." The tension on the ship was suffocating as the remaining crew gathered, readying themselves for the next phase of the mission. The path ahead was no longer just about exploration. They were venturing into the heart of a mystery that could alter the course of history. The deeper they went, the more the unknown seemed to push back, as if someone, was watching, waiting for them to make their move. Marcus could feel the pull of the abyss growing stronger with each passing moment. The danger was real, but the truth was something far more potent. It was buried beneath the ocean's surface, and it was not about to let them leave without revealing its secrets. As the team prepared for the next dive, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they had just awoken something ancient. Something powerful. The ruins, the pulsing light, the lost knowledge, everything pointed to the same conclusion. They were standing on the edge of a discovery that would change humanity forever. And yet, the deeper they went, the more it became clear. The abyss was not a place to uncover truth, it was a place where the truth could consume them whole. The air on the ship was thick with dread and anticipation as Marcus and the remaining team members gathered around the control room. The submersible the warden was now missing, its fate unknown. The crew had lost all communication with it, and the team was paralyzed by the uncertainty of what lay ahead. But Marcus, ever determined, refused to let fear deter him. He had come too far, and the truth was within his grasp. Whatever awaited them beneath the ocean, he was ready. "We're not turning back," Marcus said firmly, his voice cutting through the unease. "We're going after them. And we're bringing the warden back." Mr. Lawson stood beside him, his expression grim but resolute. "We have no choice now. If we don't move forward, we may never know what we've uncovered. But we're not going in blind. We have to be cautious, whatever's down there doesn't want us to find it." Despite the seriousness of the situation, Marcus felt a surge of adrenaline. The pulsing light from the ruins, the symbols on the walls, the strange energy that seemed to warp the very fabric of reality, all of it was interconnected. And the deeper they went, the more convinced he became that this wasn't just about an ancient alien civilization or a lost relic of the past. It was something more, a force of unimaginable power, tied to the very origins of Earth itself. The decision was made. They would deploy a new submersible, one that was even more advanced than the Warden. This vehicle, the Seeker, was designed to withstand extreme pressure and interference from unknown sources. It was their last chance to get to the bottom of this mystery and retrieve the missing team members. As the Seeker was lowered into the abyss, Marcus's thoughts raced. The ocean stretched out before him, an endless void that seemed to swallow them whole. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. Every inch of progress felt like they were pushing through an invisible barrier, a barrier that seemed to resist their presence, as if the ocean itself was warning them to turn back. "Keep your eyes on the monitors," Lawson instructed, his voice steady but tense. "If anything goes wrong, we pull back immediately." The submersible descended, the glow of its lights cutting through the dark, murky water. The faint pulse of the light from the ruins grew stronger, reverberating through the surrounding sea. Marcus felt an inexplicable pull toward it, a sense of inevitability that he couldn't shake. The structure was alive, and somehow, it knew they were coming. As they approached the chamber, the outline of the ancient ruins appeared on the sonar. This time, however, the structure was different. The glyphs on the walls had changed, almost as if they were shifting and rearranging themselves. The symbols no longer looked static, they were moving, responding to their presence. The pulsing light intensified, becoming almost blinding. Then, as the Seeker reached the entrance of the chamber, everything stopped. The light flickered once, and the submersible systems went dark. The glow from the structure was the only source of illumination, casting eerie shadows across the stone columns. The deep, guttural hum that had accompanied the light now reverberated through the walls, filling the cabin of the submersible with a strange, oppressive energy. "Marcus, do you see that?" one of the engineers whispered, her voice shaking. The question was unnecessary, Marcus saw it too. At the center of the chamber, where the pulsing light had been, something new had emerged. A figure stood in the heart of the ruins, cloaked in light, its form indistinct yet unmistakably humanoid. It was as if the very light from the structure had given birth to this being. Its presence was both alien and familiar, something out of time and space. A shiver ran down Marcus's spine. He couldn't understand what he was seeing, but instinctively, he knew that this was the moment he had been waiting for. The figure was not just a creation of the ruins, it was something that had been waiting for them. Waiting for him. "Who are you?" Marcus whispered, almost involuntarily. His voice seemed small in the vast emptiness of the ocean. To his shock, the figure responded, not with words, but with a wave of energy that pulsed through the submersible systems. The screens flickered, the lights flared, and then, everything went silent. The world outside the submersible seemed to warp, and for a brief moment, Marcus felt as though he was falling into the light itself. And then, a voice filled his mind. It was not a voice in the traditional sense, but a feeling, a thought that resonated deep within him. "You have come seeking answers. But are you prepared for the truth?" Marcus's heart skipped a beat. The voice was not from a human mind, it was alien, ancient, a consciousness that had been waiting for this moment. This was not a simple relic from the past. This was something far more profound, something that had existed long before humanity had even risen from the Earth's primordial soil. "The truth you seek is not of your world, nor is it of your time. But you are bound to it, as it is bound to you. The mysteries you chase are not just those of the past, but of the future that is yet to be written. The path forward is yours to decide." Marcus was paralyzed, his mind swirling with questions. What did it mean? What was this entity? And what was the truth it spoke of? Before he could formulate another question, the figure vanished, fading into the light. But the pulsing energy remained, stronger than ever. The symbols on the walls stopped shifting and settled into a single, unbroken pattern, one that seemed to glow with an almost unbearable intensity. And then, as if responding to the presence of the submersible, the chamber began to change. The very structure of the ruins began to shift, its stone walls folding inward, the ancient pillars moving, rearranging themselves into new configurations. Marcus's heart raced. This wasn't just a discovery. It was an awakening. Suddenly, the submersible jolted, throwing the crew members off balance. The force was incredible, as if the entire chamber was coming to life around them. The walls collapsed inward, and the floor buckled beneath their feet. The very ocean seemed to tremble in response. "We need to get out of here," Lawson shouted, but Marcus couldn't move. He was transfixed by the spectacle unfolding before him. This was the moment of revelation, the moment they had all been waiting for. The ruins were not just a place of discovery. They were a living entity, a force that had been waiting for humanity to awaken it. And now, the time had come. The abyss had revealed its secrets, and there was no turning back. The chamber continued to fold in on itself, the ocean's pulse growing louder. The glowing energy surged, and Marcus realized with chilling clarity that this wasn't just an alien artifact. It was a gateway to something far beyond their understanding. The figure had spoken the truth. They had come seeking answers, but now, they had to face the consequences of their discovery. The truth they had uncovered was not of their world, nor was it of their time. It was a truth that belonged to the future. And the future was waiting. As the submersible was pulled into the heart of the shifting structure, Marcus understood that their mission was no longer just about exploring the past. They were standing at the threshold of a new beginning, a new chapter for humanity. The abyss had revealed its secrets, but it had also revealed a path forward, one that would change the course of their world forever. And in that moment, as the ocean swallowed them whole, Marcus knew that they were no longer just explorers, they were part of something much greater. They were part of the truth.